In the gray dawn of March 1847, along a forgotten dirt road in central Georgia, a weary traveler reined in his horse beside a muddy creek. Fog lay heavy on the fields like a funeral veil. Then he heard the bell, sharp, commanding, and looked up. Emerging from the shadows of the quarters were children. Not the usual dark-skinned little ones bent to the soil. These children were pale as milk, hair catching the first weak sun like spun gold. Eyes the color of storm-tossed seas. Every face bore the same delicate bones, the same haunted gaze. They moved in silence, small hands already clutching sacks, already learning the rhythm of endless labor. And the traveler felt it in his marrow, these were no accident of chance. They were the living proof of a sin so vast, so deliberate, that even God seemed to turn his face away, yet still watch. The air that morning tasted of damp earth and coming rain. Elias Harlan, a cotton factor from Augusta, had ridden hard since before first light, chasing rumors of early blooms along the Oconee River. His gelding, a sturdy chestnut named Jericho, had picked up a stone in his shoe miles back, forcing the stop. Harlan knelt by the creek, prying at the hoof with his knife, when the bell rang again, 3 measured tolls that carried across the low fields like a summons from another world. He rose slowly. Through the thinning mist, the quarters came into view, a low, weathered line of cabins, smoke curling from clay chimneys. Figures stepped out, adults first, then the children. Harlan counted them without thinking, 14, maybe 15, scattered among the rows like pale moths against the dark green cotton. Their skin held no warmth of the sun, it gleamed almost translucent in the early light. Hair shades of honey and ash. Features fine, almost fragile, as though carved from marble and then breathed into life. They did not laugh or chase one another. They moved with the careful economy of those who already knew pain. An overseer strode out from the big house, a broad man in homespun, a coiled rope at his belt instead of a whip, yet the threat was the same. He barked once, sharp as a gunshot. The children quickened their pace, older ones shouldering baskets, younger ones trailing, mimicking the stoop and reach of picking. Harlan stood motionless, knife forgotten in his hand. He had traveled Georgia's back roads for 15 years, bartering seed and credit, weighing bales, counting souls on ledgers. He had seen the system's machinery turn, had profited from it. But this was something else. These children looked like kin. Like brothers and sisters. Like they all carried the same blood. The big house rose on a low rise, 2 stories of white clapboard, wide porch, green shutters. Not grand like the river plantations, but solid, well-kept, a place of quiet wealth. A man appeared on the porch, early 40s, dark hair streaked with silver, beard trimmed close. He held a tin cup, steam rising. His eyes scanned the fields, lingering on the pale figures below. The expression on his face was not cruelty, not anger. It was contentment. The look of a man who has planted seed and watches it grow exactly as planned. "Morning, traveler," the man called, voice warm, neighborly. "You look like you've come far. Horse needs tending?" Harlan hesitated. He could mount and ride on, pretend he had seen nothing. But the weight in his chest would not let him. He tied Jericho to the fence rail and climbed the steps. "Elias Harlan, from Augusta. Cotton factor. Thought I might water my horse and ask after your crop." The man smiled, extended a hand. "Josiah Blackwood. This is Willow Bend. Come in, come in. Coffee's hot, and my wife will set an extra plate." Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and fresh biscuits. Wide pine floors, a parlor with a spinet piano, sheet music open as though someone had played yesterday. A dining table long enough for company that rarely came. Blackwood gestured to a chair and called toward the kitchen. "Rebecca, we have a guest." A woman appeared, Margaret Blackwood, younger than her husband, blonde hair pinned tight, dress plain but neat. Her eyes met Harlan's for half a second, flat, guarded, the look of someone who has learned to keep secrets behind politeness. "Mr. Harlan," she murmured, then vanished again. Blackwood sat at the head of the table, easy, expansive. "Good year for cotton, they say. Prices steady. My fields are strong." Harlan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had seen the children. He needed to know. As a young enslaved woman, dark-skinned, about 16, brought coffee and bread, Blackwood spoke without looking at her. "Tell Sarah the little ones need shade at noon. Can't have them wilting before picking season." "Yes, sir," the girl whispered, retreating. Harlan seized the opening. "You've got quite a few young ones out there. They stand out." Blackwood's smile widened, pride lighting his eyes. 17 now. 2 still in the nursery, too small for the rows. The oldest, Caleb, he's 13. Strong back already. I'll get good money for him next spring. The words landed like a stone in Harlan's gut. Good money. Spoken the way one spoke of selling a yearling colt. "You bred them deliberately?" Harlan asked, voice steady with effort. Blackwood leaned back, as though explaining a new strain of seed. "Most planters let nature take its course. I saw opportunity. 12 years ago, when I took over from my father, I chose carefully. Healthy women, good bone structure, lighter skin when possible. And I ensured the line stayed pure. No guesswork. Every child carries my blood. They pass for house servants, personal attendants. Buyers pay double for the look." Harlan's fingers tightened on the cup. He pictured the fields again, those pale faces bent under the sun, hands already calloused, eyes already learning not to meet the overseer's gaze. These were Blackwood's sons and daughters. His own flesh. And he spoke of selling them like livestock. "The mothers," Harlan said quietly. "Do they accept this?" Blackwood's face hardened, just a fraction. "Most do. They know their place. I feed them well when they carry, give them rest after birth, enough, not too much. If one resists," he shrugged, "I remind her who owns her body. The law stands with me. Scripture too, servants, obey your masters. Simple as that." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Harlan thought of Genesis, man made in God's image, given dominion over the earth, not over one another's souls. He thought of the curse on Canaan, twisted by men to justify chains. He thought of Pharaoh, hardening his heart, and the plagues that followed. Blackwood sat there, calm, certain, a man who had turned creation into commerce. Margaret reappeared in the doorway. "Josiah, Mr. Tate from town is here about the corn." Blackwood rose. "Excuse me, Mr. Harlan." "Help yourself. We'll talk terms when I return." He left. Harlan sat alone, heart pounding. Margaret lingered. Their eyes met again. This time, something flickered, grief, perhaps, or rage held so long it had turned cold. "Mrs. Blackwood," Harlan ventured, "does the preacher ever call here?" Her hands twisted in her apron. "Sunday services in town. Reverend calls my husband a godly steward. Donations keep the church roof tight." Her voice was flat, rehearsed. She turned away. Harlan stared at the empty doorway. Outside, the bell rang again, end of first break. The children would bend once more to the rows, pale skin burning under the rising sun. When Blackwood returned, they spoke of contracts, delivery dates, prices per bale. Harlan nodded, promised papers by week's end, planned a fall visit. Lies, all of it. But he needed Blackwood to believe nothing had changed. He rode away an hour later, Jericho's hooves kicking dust. He looked back once, the fields stretched wide, the pale children scattered like ghosts among the green. 13 years old, Caleb would have 12 months, maybe less, before the auction block. Before separation. Before a lifetime of strangers. Harlan had lived comfortably in the system. Cotton paid his house, his clothes, his children's schooling. He had told himself it was necessary, ordained, the natural order. But this was not nature. This was abomination. A man playing God, breeding souls for profit, then selling his own blood for silver. The ride to Augusta felt endless. The city greeted him with its familiar clamor, wagons groaning under bales, auctioneers chanting, enslaved people moving through streets with downcast eyes. His office overlooked right square ledgers, ink, the smell of tobacco and wax. His clerk, young Samuel Tate, looked up from his desk. "You're late, sir. Look like you've seen a ghost." Harlan sank into his chair. "Samuel, have you ever heard of planters, deliberately increasing their holdings? By fathering children themselves?" Samuel's face tightened. He glanced at the door, lowered his voice. "Whispers. Never names. But yes. Some call them breeding farms. After the import ban in '08, prices rose. More mouths to feed, but also more to sell. Law says the child follows the mother. No crime. But morally." Samuel looked away. "Morality don't pay debts, sir. The whole South runs on it. Question one piece, the whole thing unravels." Harlan told him everything. The pale faces. The 17 children. The casual talk of selling Caleb. Samuel listened, growing pale. "What will you do?" "I don't know," Harlan admitted. "But I can't unsee it." Samuel thought a moment. "There's Dr. Elias Monroe. Old physician. Travels plantations, sees things others don't. Folks say he's uneasy with the system. Office on Broad Street. Careful, though. Men like Blackwood have friends." Harlan nodded. He stood, coat still on. Outside, the square bustled, cotton changing hands, lives changing hands. He walked toward Broad Street, past auction blocks, past scarred backs bent under loads, past eyes that never quite met his. How long had he walked past suffering and called it business? Dr. Monroe's office was narrow brick, a small brass plate, E. Monroe, M.D. The door opened to a waiting room smelling of carbolic and old grief. An elderly woman sat at a desk, sorting papers. She looked up. "May I help you, sir?" Harlan swallowed. "I need to speak with the doctor. It's urgent. A matter of conscience." Elias Harlan stepped into Dr. Elias Monroe's waiting room on a Thursday afternoon in late March 1847. The air outside was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and river mud, but inside the narrow brick building on Broad Street, time felt suspended. The elderly receptionist glanced up from her ledger, spectacles perched on the end of her nose. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "No, ma'am. But I need to speak with the doctor. It's urgent. A matter of conscience." She studied him a moment, his dust-streaked coat, the tension in his jaw, then wrote his name on a slip of paper and vanished through the inner door. Harlan sat on a hard oak chair. The room was small, lit by a single oil lamp even in daylight. A faint ticking came from a wall clock, the only other sound was the muffled murmur of voices beyond the door. He rehearsed words in his head, but none felt adequate. How do you confess complicity in a sin you only now recognize? The door opened. Dr. Monroe appeared, early 60s, white hair thick and unruly, beard trimmed close, spectacles magnifying eyes the color of worn slate. He moved with the careful economy of a man who has carried too many burdens too long. His coat was immaculate, but the cuffs were frayed from years of washing. "Mr. Harlan," he said, extending a hand. "Margaret says it's urgent." "Are you ill?" "Not in body, doctor. In spirit, perhaps." Monroe's expression shifted, curiosity edged with something deeper, something wary. "Come through." The office was a sanctuary of order amid chaos. Shelves lined with medical volumes, Gray's Anatomy, treatises on midwifery, yellowed pamphlets from Philadelphia abolition societies tucked discreetly between them. Anatomical charts hung on the walls, muscles and veins rendered in faded ink. The air smelled of laudanum, ether, and the faint copper tang of blood long dried. Monroe gestured to a chair facing the desk and sank into his own with a soft grunt, old pain in the spine from years bent over birthing beds and fevered bodies. "Plantation medicine," Harlan began. "I've come about a plantation in central Georgia. Willow Bend. Josiah Blackwood." Monroe's hand paused on the desk blotter. "Go on." Harlan told it all again. The pale children in the fields, 17 of them, features unmistakably Blackwood's own. The casual confession over coffee, deliberate breeding, controlled bloodlines, profit from selling his own flesh. The plan to sell Caleb, the eldest, next spring. The mothers who cooperated or were made to. Monroe listened in silence, fingers steepled. When Harlan finished, the doctor rose, walked to a tall cabinet, and withdrew a dark bottle of bourbon and 2 tumblers. He poured without asking, handed one to Harlan, then drank half his own in a single swallow. "I've practiced in this region 31 years, Monroe said quietly. Delivered more babies than I can count. Treated fevers, lash wounds, broken bones from the gin. Seen women torn open by difficult births, children born dead or dying. I've watched the system grind people to dust and call it economy." He set the glass down. Blackwood's place is systematic. Not the impulsive cruelty of some planters. Not drunken violence. Calculated. Like a man improving cattle stock. That makes it worse, somehow. The coldness of it. Harlan leaned forward. "You've been there." Monroe nodded. First time, 1835. A girl named Ruth, 17. Hard labor. The child, a girl, lived. Skin pale as cream. Eyes the same hazel-green as Blackwood's. I knew the moment I saw her. I stitched the mother, checked the babe, took my fee, and left. Said nothing. You went back. He kept calling. Difficult births. Fevers after delivery. Infections. I delivered at least 6 of those children myself. Maybe 8. Lost count. Watched their mothers bleed, watched them beg for rest he wouldn't give. Harlan's throat tightened. How many died? Monroe's gaze dropped to the desk. 3. That I know of. All within 14 days of giving birth. All from sepsis or hemorrhage. All because he forced them back to the fields before their bodies had knit. I argued. I pleaded. Told him the risks, medical, human. He said they were malingering. Said he couldn't spare workers. Said the South runs on cotton, not sentiment. Harlan's voice was barely above a whisper. That's murder. Monroe laughed, a short, bitter sound. Murder under the law? No. Property management. A jury of planters would call it unfortunate accident. The law says the child follows the mother's condition. The mother is property. The child is property. The master may use his property as he sees fit. End of story. He opened a drawer and withdrew a worn leather journal, pages thick, edges frayed. He opened it to a marked place and slid it across the desk. Read. Harlan scanned the entry, date, patient name Ruth, 1837. Complications, prolonged labor, lacerations. Postpartum, return to field workday 7 against medical advice. Outcome, puerperal fever, death day 14. Then another, Eliza, 1841. Hemorrhage. Forced labor day 5. Death day 11. Then Sarah, 1844. Same pattern. Monroe's voice was steady. I keep records. Not just medicine. Observations. Conditions. Refusals of care. Deaths that could have been prevented. Hundreds of pages. Multiple plantations. Someday, when the wind changes, when men find courage to look at what they've built, this will matter. Harlan closed the journal gently. Is there no way to stop him now? Not through courts. Not yet. But there are other paths. Paths that walk in shadow because daylight is too dangerous. Monroe leaned forward. I know people. Good people. They move in silence. They help the burdened find freedom. They risk everything, homes, families, lives, because they answer to a law higher than Georgia's code. Learn to do right, seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Isaiah. Not suggestion. Command. Harlan felt the weight settle deeper. The Underground Railroad. Monroe nodded. They don't give names easily. They don't trust quickly. But if you're sincere, if you're willing to pay the price, they will find use for you. What price? Everything. Your business. Your standing. Your safety. If caught, prison. If lucky, only ruin. But those children. Caleb has how long? A year? Less? Every day you wait is another day they live in chains forged by their own father. Harlan stared at the journal. He thought of Caleb in the field, 13, strong, already calloused, already learning the whip's shadow. Thought of the mothers buried in unmarked graves, their children sold for profit. Thought of Pharaoh, who hardened his heart, and the judgment that followed. I'm ready, Harlan said. Tell me how to begin. Monroe did not give addresses or names. Too dangerous. Instead, he offered a map of words. There's a Plain meeting house 15 miles west of Savannah. Plain friends gather Wednesdays at dusk. Go. Sit in silence. If the Spirit moves you, speak. Afterward, approach the elder. Say you seek to learn of their charitable labors among the afflicted. Charitable labors. Monroe's eyes held steady. Code. They'll understand. Harlan left the office as the sun dipped low, painting the streets in blood and gold. Savannah hummed around him, cotton wagons rumbling, auctioneers calling, enslaved people moving with downcast eyes. He walked past them all, seeing them truly for the first time. That night he could not sleep. The townhouse was quiet, the air heavy with magnolia and salt from the river. He rose at 3, lit a lamp, and began to write. Every detail from Willow Bend, the children's faces, Blackwood's words, the overseer's routines. It was the beginning of his own ledger. The following Wednesday he rode out to the meeting house, a simple frame building, no steeple, no cross. Inside, 20 souls sat in silence on plain benches. No music. No sermon. Only waiting. Harlan sat among them, heart loud in his ears. Minutes stretched. Then an elder rose, tall, thin, beard long and gray. Friends, he said softly, the prophet Micah asks, what does the Lord require of thee but to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly? We are called not to comfort, but to courage. Afterward, Harlan approached the elder. I'm new here, he said. I seek to learn of your community's charitable work. The elder, Nathan Garrett, studied him. And why now? Because I have seen suffering I can no longer ignore. Garrett nodded once. Join us for supper. The meal was simple, bread, stew, silence broken by quiet talk of crops, scripture, weather. But Harlan heard the undercurrent references to traveling friends, cargo moving north, rooms needed for guests. Code, woven into ordinary speech. Later, Garrett led him outside to a grove of live oaks, Spanish moss trailing like funeral veils. Moonlight silvered the ground. Dr. Monroe sent word, Garrett said. He trusts you. That matters. But trust is earned. Tell me what you know. Harlan spoke of Willow Bend. The 17 children. The breeding. The deaths. The plan to sell Caleb. Garrett listened, face grave. We've watched Blackwood for years. Isolated place. Tight security. We've aided a few who escaped on their own. But a larger effort, that requires knowledge. Routines. Weak points. Willing hearts inside. How can I help? You travel freely. You have reason to visit. Observe. Note overseers, schedules, wagons to town. Sundays they go to church, security thins. Monthly supply runs, people leave the grounds. Small openings. And contact? Garrett handed him a small square of paper. Learn the signs. Blue ribbon on a fence post means I wish to travel. Red means danger. Leave messages only when safe. Fold it under a plate. Tucked in a book. Subtle. Patient. Harlan took the paper. I understand the risk. Do you? Garrett's voice was gentle but iron. Once you begin, there is no turning back. You become a target. Blackwood has friends. Patrols. Catchers. If they suspect you, they will ruin you. Or worse. Harlan thought of his ledger, his house, his life. Then he thought of Caleb's eyes, Blackwood's eyes, looking up from the cotton rows. I'm certain, he said. Over the next weeks, Harlan became a quiet apprentice to the invisible network. He learned routes that snaked through swamps and pine barrens, safe houses marked by subtle signs, a lantern in a certain window, a quilt pattern on a line. He learned conductors, mostly free black men and women, some formerly enslaved, who risked death to guide others north. He learned codes, 5 bales premium meant 5 souls ready, rain expected meant patrols heavy. He returned to Willow Bend 4 times, each under pretense of cotton contracts. He watched. He waited. He saw the 2 overseers, one for fields, one for house. He noted Sunday mornings, family gone to town, gates less guarded. He saw the monthly wagon to town, 2 or 3 people loading supplies, unguarded for hours. Contact came through Rebecca, a house servant, dark-skinned, eyes sharp behind lowered lids. She served silently, but Harlan saw her watch. On his 4th visit, while Blackwood argued with a buyer outside, Harlan slipped a folded note beneath his coffee saucer. It read, Friends wait north. If you seek freedom, tie blue ribbon defense by road. God sees. He left it, heart hammering. 3 days later, riding past on another errand, he looked. There, tied low on the post, almost hidden, a scrap of blue cloth fluttering in the breeze. Rebecca had answered. The blue ribbon had been the beginning. Not the end. Elias Harlan understood now that freedom was not stolen in a single bold stroke. It was borrowed, piece by fragile piece, through whispers, glances, scraps of cloth, folded notes hidden beneath saucers and inside folded newspapers. Each message carried the weight of lives. After the first ribbon appeared, Harlan passed another note during his next visit to Willow Bend, slipped inside a week-old Savannah Republican he left casually on the kitchen table. The words were simple, precise. How many seek the road north? Can you move unseen? Answer same way. 2 weeks passed like years. Then, one humid afternoon, a free black carter, broad-shouldered, silent, eyes that missed nothing, delivered a folded scrap of coarse paper to Harlan's office back door. The handwriting was labored, letters uneven, ink smudged from nervous fingers. But the words cut clean. 6 ready. 4 mothers. 2 oldest children. Crawford watches closer since last moon. 1 tried to run. Caught. Whipped. We wait. 6. Harlan carried the note straight to Nathan Garrett at the Wednesday meeting. They sat afterward beneath the live oaks, moonlight filtering through Spanish moss like pale tears. 6 is a family, Garrett said quietly. Not just bodies. Hearts tied together. We move them in pieces, 2, maybe 3 at a time, or we risk the whole chain breaking. What opens the door? Harlan asked. Garrett's eyes narrowed. A legitimate absence. Something Crawford expects. The monthly supply run. Hours away from the plantation. If we can stretch those hours, we buy distance. Harlan returned to Willow Bend with new eyes. He no longer saw only fields and quarters. He saw people. He learned names in fragments. Louisa, 26, mother of 3 of Blackwood's children, eyes hollowed by grief and endless births. Hannah, 31, 5 children born in chains, back scarred, but spirit unbowed. Abigail, 19, heavy with child, terrified yet resolute. Susan, 22, 2 infants still nursing, torn between escape and the cradle. Thomas, 13, Caleb in the old ledger, Blackwood's oldest, marked for sale next month. Ruth, 12, Thomas's sister in blood and suffering, already carrying the weight of knowing her father would sell her too. The emotional knots were tighter than any rope. Susan could not leave her babies. Hannah offered to stay if it meant the younger ones could go. Thomas burned to run before the auction block, but feared for Ruth. They were not cargo. They were a broken family deciding, in whispers, who would taste freedom and who would remain to bear the whip for it. Harlan brought every detail to the network. They met in the meetinghouse annex after dark. Garrett, Benjamin, the conductor who had crossed back and forth 17 times, 2 Quaker women who ran safe houses, a free black blacksmith who forged false papers when needed. Benjamin's voice was low, gravel rough. First question they must answer: are you ready to never see the ones left behind again? Not in this life. Not ever. The system counts on love to keep people chained. If even one heart falters on the road, if they turn back for a child, a mother, the catchers find us all. Harlan felt the truth sink deep. He had planned routes, timetables, signals. He had not planned for heartbreak. How do I know their hearts? He asked. Benjamin leaned forward. You speak to them. Not through notes. Face to face. No plantation. Neutral ground. The supply run. Create a moment. The next run was early June. Harlan arranged to be in Savannah the day, papers in hand, excuses ready. The wagon arrived at 10:30, driven by Polk, the overseer whose cruelty was legend even among other overseers. With him, Rebecca, Daniel, a field hand in his 30s, Thomas, and 3 others Harlan did not recognize at first: Louisa, Hannah, Abigail. 6. All of them. Polk went into the tavern for a quick drink. The 6 worked in silence, unloading. Harlan crossed the street, heart hammering, pretending to inspect nearby crates. Rebecca, he murmured, eyes on the ground. The ribbon. Do you understand what never coming back means? She kept stacking sacks. We know. We've known since the first lash fell on someone we loved. Thomas, rolling a barrel, spoke without looking up. He moved the sail. Next month. If we stay, I'm gone. Ruth too, soon after. 2 weeks? Harlan asked. Can you be ready? Rebecca's voice was iron. Tomorrow, if you say. We've been ready years. Harlan outlined the plan in fragments. Next run, Polk delayed, arrested on a minor pretext, released later. 6 vanish in the window. Hidden in town till dark. Then north with Benjamin. Safe houses to Ohio. Can you trust? Follow exactly? No panic? Thomas met his eyes for the first time. We trust God. And you. That's enough. Polk returned. Harlan melted into the crowd. 2 weeks. Every detail sharpened. Garrett secured 7 safe houses, Quaker farms, free black homes, even one run by a white merchant whose daughter had once been seized on false charges of being a runaway. Benjamin would guide the first 40 miles. Others would take over, stage by stage. Deputy Marcus Reed, whose sister had fled Blackwood's employ after witnessing too much, agreed to the delay. 2 hours. 3 if I stretch the paperwork. After that, Crawford will howl. Margaret, Harlan's housekeeper, whose mother had carried her north at 3 years old, arranged the first hiding place, Catherine's cellar on the edge of town. Harlan prepared for ruin. A letter to his clerk. A will redirecting assets. A quiet confession to Margaret. She listened, then spoke. My mother ran with me on her back. White hands fed us. Black hands hit us. If you fall, others rise. That's how it works. 3 days before the run, Harlan visited Willow Bend one last time. Blackwood was irritable. Caught one smuggling a letter. 20 lashes. Can't let it spread. Harlan's blood ran cold. But Rebecca served coffee. Later, unmarked, steady. She met his eyes once. No fear. Only resolve. He left a final note under a plate. Still ready? Next day, riding past, blue ribbon tied again. Lower this time. Defiant. June 14th dawned like judgment. Harlan waited in the square, papers spread, every nerve alive. The wagon rolled in at 10:47. Polk sweating, bored. Deputy Reed stepped forward like clockwork. New city regulations. Full unload. Inspection. Polk cursed. Reed was implacable. An hour dragged. Then another. At 12:15 Polk stormed off to the privy. The moment broke open. A second wagon, driven by a stranger from the network, pulled alongside. Canvas parted. 6 shadows slipped inside. Crates shifted. Canvas fell. Rain snapped. The wagon rolled away at walking pace. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Reed continued his charade. Polk returned. Reloaded. Then froze. Where are they? Reed looked around, innocent. Your workers? Not my concern. Panic bloomed. Polk searched. Shouted names. Merchants shrugged. By 2 o'clock he whipped the horses toward Willow Bend. The 6 were already underground, Catherine's cellar, damp earth, smell of roots and hope. Harlan descended once, basket in hand, food, water, a folded map of stars for Benjamin. Rebecca wept when she saw him. Not sorrow. Release. You're safe, Harlan whispered. Tonight Benjamin comes. Trust him. Ohio is real. Thomas's voice cracked. Free? Truly free? Free, Harlan said. No master. No sale. Just you. He left them in silence. Back home, he waited. Every creak of the house felt like boots on the porch. At 3:30, Blackwood learned. Fury erupted. He stormed Savannah, demanded patrols, hired 4 catchers, men whose names carried dread. But by then the night wagon had already rolled north under stars, Benjamin at the reins, 6 souls hidden beneath hay in prayer. The hunt was on. The question remained, would grace outrun vengeance? The slave catchers rode out at dusk, torches high, voices sharp with promises of reward. They combed Savannah's docks, questioned stevedores, rattled tavern doors. They rode north, then west, chasing rumors the network had carefully seeded, a group seen near the Alabama line, a campfire spotted in the pine barrens. By the time Benjamin's wagon rolled out of Catherine's yard under cover of full dark, the hunters were 20 miles off course, following ghosts. The journey was merciless. They traveled by night, slept by day in haylofts thick with dust, cellars damp with river rot, attics where every creak felt like a boot on the stair. Hunger gnawed when safe houses were too hot to approach. Rain soaked them to the bone. Fevers came and went. Fear never left. Yet mile by mile they moved, through Georgia's red clay, Tennessee's rolling hills, Kentucky's shadowed hollows. At each transfer, a new face met them, a Quaker farmer with calloused hands and steady eyes, a free black woman who pressed cornbread into their palms without a word, a white merchant who risked his store to hide them one more night. 18 days. On the morning of July 2nd, they crossed the Ohio River line. Benjamin stopped the wagon on a rise overlooking the water. The sun broke gold across the fields. Rebecca stepped down first, bare feet touching soil that owed no master. Thomas followed, then Ruth, Louisa, Hannah, Abigail, her belly round with the child she would name Charles. They stood in silence. No one spoke for a long minute. Then Hannah lifted her face to the sky and whispered, "We made it." Benjamin sent the coded message south, all packages delivered. Safe. Complete. When the folded note reached Elias Harlan in Augusta, he sat alone in his office, lamp guttering low. He read the words once. Twice. Then he laid his head on the desk and wept, not loud sobs, but the quiet, shaking release of a man who had carried too much for too long. 6 lives pulled from the jaws of ownership. 6 futures unshackled. It was not the end of slavery. It could not resurrect the 3 mothers buried in unmarked ground on Willow Bend. It could not unmake the childhood stolen from 17 children born of calculated violation. But it was a crack in the machine. A proof that the system, for all its iron laws and iron whips, could bleed. Josiah Blackwood's fury was biblical in its scope. He returned from Savannah to find the quarters silent with dread. He doubled the overseers. He posted night riders. He flogged anyone who looked at him too long. Susan, the one who stayed for her babies, was dragged to the smokehouse and questioned until her voice broke. She swore she knew nothing. Blackwood did not believe her. 2 weeks later she was chained to a coffle bound for Alabama, her infants left wailing in another woman's arms. 3 more were sold before August ended. Families shattered like glass under a boot. Yet the deeper wound was already festering. In Ohio, abolitionist printers smelled blood. Louisa and Hannah sat for interviews in plain rooms lit by oil lamps. Their words, calm, precise, devastating, spilled onto newsprint. They spoke of forced pregnancies, of children sold like yearlings, of mothers worked to death within days of birth. The accounts raced north: Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Cleveland. Pamphlets multiplied. Pulpits thundered. Cartoonists drew Blackwood as a grinning devil counting pale-skinned infants like coins. They called it the Georgia breeder case. His name became shorthand for the rotting heart of the institution. Blackwood fought back at first. He took out ads in Georgia papers, lies about humane treatment, threats of libel suits. But the details were too exact. Dr. Monroe's medical ledger arrived in abolitionist hands: dates, names, causes of death. Merchants who once drank his coffee now swore affidavits. Even Margaret Blackwood, through her attorney, filed for separation, citing acts repugnant to God and nature. By September the ostracism was complete. Church elders asked him not to return. Business dried up. Neighbors crossed the road when they saw him. The man who had built a quiet empire on stolen flesh became a pariah in his own land. In the Statehouse, a district attorney named Theodore Walsh, quietly abolitionist, seized the moment. He drafted a bill: mandatory birth records on plantations, minimal postpartum care for enslaved women, penalties, slight, for negligence causing death. It passed in November 1847, riddled with loopholes, fiercely opposed, yet law. Men called it the Blackwood Act behind closed doors. A bitter monument. Harlan lived under shadow for months. Catchers questioned him twice. His alibi held: a cotton factor in town on business. Deputy Reed's paperwork was impeccable. The network stayed invisible. No house burned. No conductor betrayed. Harlan never stopped. He funneled money north, past intelligence, kept his ledger growing: letters, testimonies, scraps of proof. He never let another escape himself, but he remained a quiet pillar until the end. Blackwood held on until 1851. Profits fell. Workers sickened under harsher regimes. He sold Willow Bend at a crushing loss and fled to Texas, chasing fresh soil and fewer eyes. Whether he resumed his program there, no record survives. The network in Texas was thinner, silence thicker. The 17 children, his blood, his property, were sold with the land. Scattered to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Most lived to see 1865. Some did not. Those who did woke to emancipation, free at last. Thomas grew into a carpenter in Ohio, married, fathered 4. He told his children every night, "Your grandfather owned me. Your great-grandmother carried me north. Never forget." Ruth taught school. She wrote of the wound of being daughter and chattel at once. Louisa remarried, bore 2 free children. The grief of the 3 left behind never fully lifted, but joy grew beside it. Hannah spoke on stages across the North, voice steady, eyes fierce, raising funds, sheltering new arrivals. Abigail's Sonny Charles was born free in October 1847. She wrote Harlan years later, "He reads already. He laughs without fear. Thank you for giving him a world where no man can own him." Harlan kept the letter in his desk until he died in 1873. He never married. The escaped families became his kin. Dr. Monroe's journal, over 1,000 pages of quiet horror, was sealed until his death. Published in 1869, it stands today in archives, a cold ledger of lives reduced to entries. Benjamin joined the Union Army in 1863, scouting the same back roads he once used to guide souls to freedom. He lived to 1894, free in a changed nation. Nathan Garrett died in 1862, never seeing the proclamation. He died content, knowing lives had passed through his hands into light. In 1891, Martha, one of the younger daughters, born 1846, published Owned by My Father. 100 pages. Unsparing. She wrote, "Hate is too small a word. He was my father. He was my owner. He fed me because I was valuable. He sold my brother when I was 7. How do you untangle that knot? When freedom came, I expected joy. Instead, I felt grief for the girl I never was. Rage for my mother broken by his will. Confusion, who am I if not property? It took 20 years to make peace. Not forgiveness. Some things lie beyond forgiveness. But peace. I married a kind man. We have 3 children. They know their history. They know the whip and the prayer. They know freedom is not forgetting, it is refusing to let the past own you. My revenge is simple, I live well. I live free. My children belong to no one but God and themselves. My father's name fades. My mother's courage lives on. That is enough. The plantation is gone. Fields turn to subdivisions or pine. The people are dust. Yet the story endures. It is not about monsters alone. It is about the ordinary men who enabled them, the merchants who bought the cotton, the preachers who blessed the system, the neighbors who looked away. It is about the moment Elias Harlan could no longer look away. It is about 6 who ran, 11 who endured, 3 mothers buried too soon. It is about the question every generation must answer: when evil wears the face of law, when power calls cruelty economy, what will you do? Will you stay silent? Or will you act even when the cost is everything? History is not abstract. It is choices. 1 note under a plate. 1 ribbon on a fence. 1 wagon rolling north under stars. Those choices ripple. They still do. Thank you for walking this road with me. These stories are heavy. They should be. They remind us what was done and what must never be done again. If this moved you, if it unsettled you, if it made you ask hard questions of yourself, share it. Reflect in the comments. What would you have done? What will you do now? Like. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. We keep telling these truths because silence is complicity. And truth, however painful, is the only path to anything resembling redemption.